is potentially vague. Where you can find, shall we say, hard ground to stand on, solid ground, is on facts, right? On basic facts, basic reality, objective reality. So that's a good place to start, because the attack is not just on theology. The attack is against logic. This is so everyone thinks it's all about theology, but it's actually about logic. It starts with logic, the word. Remember that John 1 starts, the word was God and the word was with God. In the beginning was the word, right? The word must be true. I am the word. I'm the way, the truth. The word is truth, right? So, okay, there's a thing called the Ash conformity experiment. Now, there's a lot of bad science out there, a lot of bad experiments. This one is repeatable. This one is proven to be true. It's peer pressure. So this guy paid a whole bunch of students. He paid people, actors, students, whatever, and said, okay, look, I'm going to bring someone in, and we're going to paint a rabbit. We're going to draw a rabbit on the board, and we're going to draw a horse and a chicken, and we're going to point at the chicken and say, that's a horse. And you guys are going to go, yep, and then we're going to see what happens. And what happens is, after a few minutes, after a short while, the new person conforms. He goes along to get along, and he says, yeah, that's a horse. It's not a chicken. At first, he might protest, but then he gives in. And eventually he'll accept worse and worse lies, despite the evidence of his eyes. And eventually he conforms, right? And you mentioned there are true believers. There are true believers who will accept this completely contradictory nonsense. These ideas of gender is fixed and gender is fluid, right? These are utterly contradictory, incompatible ideas, but some will just, that's it. They want an external source of authority, right? So now so what they found was, now how do you defeat this? Because this is extremely powerful. Whether you have a small group or a large group, this is extremely powerful. Obviously, the larger group in your small unit, it's harder to resist the peer pressure. Then they discovered that if one person was willing to stand up and call bullshit and say, that is a fucking chicken, don't tell me otherwise, piss off. What they found was that one dissenter, a single dissenter, reduced the spell, and this is effectively a magic spell, would reduce the effect of the programming that they were trying to impose by 80%. So one person, depending on the size of the group, would give them only a 20% success rate in terms of indoctrination. And of that other 80%, he would snap a large percentage of them out of the spell, and they would rebel. They would wake up and they would reject the programming, as long as one person did it. All you had to do was tell the truth.
Mm-hmm. Fascinating.
Right.
I suppose what totalitarian regimes would do is kill that first dissenter as an example. And then it's anyone else. They pose that question.
So you understand the reason for censorship and the reason for oppression. They have to do this, right? So there's there are certain psychological themes which are proven, which are known, which are established. They are truths that we can rely upon. My job is to predict violence. My job is to predict how someone is going to commit a crime. There were times that I'm with someone, I'm alone, potentially unarmed. When you work in security, you don't have 50 guys on a helicopter and Tomahawk missiles at the ready. You often go places where you cannot take a weapon. All you have is these and these, right? That happens, right? Or you don't have time. You just have to react. But you have to be able to predict your environment. You have to understand human behavior. You've got to understand patterns of behavior. You've got to be able to influence things and perceive things. You've got to. So there are things that are established that we can use, but one of those things is to speak the truth. Know what the truth is, know what the facts are. So anything you can back up with proper facts. However, when you work in an environment where people will come up to you and talk to you and try to deceive you because they want to do harm or do bad, right? You can tell the difference in the language structure. When your kid talks to you and tells you a story, that is different to when your wife was trying to explain to you her stressful day. Is the language different? The structure is different. The start of the story, the end of the story, the emphases, how the language is used, how the grammar is structured, the length of the sentences, the pacing, the tone, the voice, right? So language has a form and a structure, and it is possible with training becomes much better, but you can be trained to understand. You can tell when someone's trying to sell you something. A used car salesman would talk in a very different way to someone who's saying, look, this car has problems. These are the issues. It's going to cost you this much, but I'll give you a 10% discount, but you need to understand you've got to fix this, this, and this. That's a very different story to a guy saying, you look like someone that really, really loves a classic car, and I've got just the car for you. Those are two different stories, two different narratives, right? Mm-hmm. And it's possible to pick this up. The language that tries to persuade, that propagandizes, that uses sophistry, I can almost pick it up like this. It's not always immediate, but very quickly, because I was trained in it. I was trained to recognize it, right? And you respond on an before you respond on an intellectual level, you respond on a gut level because it becomes a pattern you recognize, and you've got a system of pattern recognition. There's a name for it. Can never remember it. But anyway, you pick it up. So you can hear it in the language, the way that they argue, how they argue, the things that they deny. For instance, when they argue, they're trying to push you in one direction, but you've got to ask yourself, where they're pushing me from? What are they trying to avoid? Where they're pushing me to, right? So you've got to ask yourself questions around that. And I am skeptical constantly. I'm not paranoid, but I'm asking questions because my life depended on it at one time. So does this make sense? That
Oh yeah. This is great.
you can learn the lie from the language. The language of the lie is never like the language of the truth. It never sounds the same.
I mean, I remember I used to study neurolinguistic programming myself.
Right.
I was in a sales background. I took it upon myself to, how can I use language to best convince somebody that they need to purchase something they don't really need, you know? And so I kind of understood the techniques necessary to convince people. And you can convince people of anything as long as you say the right words in the right tone at the right time in the right way. And well, it was years ago I did it now, so I'm probably not as adept as I used to be honest. But I kind of realized I had this book called The Science of Brainwashing. I can't remember, it was some woman wrote, I can't remember what it was. And she goes into a lot of what you're talking about the use of language to manipulate, basically. And now it's like you said, it's a handy thing to have under my tool belt when doing what I do today, when it comes to looking through different philosophies, the people talking about them, characters within our movement spreading disinformation, trying to convince you of certain narratives. So I can understand what you're talking about there. But it sounds like
and you start to pick up.
your application sounds a lot more intense than mine. It sounds like you were.
No, I
you know,
mean, there was risk. There was severe risk if you made a mistake. You or someone else could be harmed, right? So I had to be very good at that. But you start to understand things. You pick things up, and yeah. So you're right. I mean, I used to teach some of this stuff. I used to teach it to people. How do you de-escalate? Because my job was, how do you de-escalate a violent situation? This thing, you say the wrong word, it's gonna escalate. At one point they used to call me the negotiator. I would be the guy that would go in and have. My job was to talk them down. I've got the hammers are behind me somewhere, but I'm the guy in front, and if the guy swings, I'm going to catch it.
Yeah.
But I've got to go in and talk them down. I've got to have that conversation. I've got to talk him down. But also, while you're focusing on him, you've got to realize you've got a blind spot. He may have friends. You've got to watch him. If he looks over your shoulder, is there someone coming up on you? Is your cover going to get there in time to protect you? So there are things so you're making this constant calculus, but you listen to the language and you'll hear it. So if you listen for it, so one, speak the truth, speak the facts. If you don't know what the truth is, then speak the facts, right? And then have a method for defining what the truth is. Use non-contradictory logic. Stick to the trivium. The trivium is critical. Good grammar, be precise in your language, right? When someone is trying to fiddle with definitions, they're lying to you. The moment they start fiddling with definitions, they're lying to you. And so you want good grammar, good logic, and your rhetoric must be based on logic and grammar. So hopefully that I don't know if that would be helpful, but this is how you can find a place that is solid, and then history, the historical method. I mean, my view is just, what did the earliest Christians believe? What did they write? What did they say? What was their consistency? And then you have some guy coming with a story. You're like, there's no one for 1,500 years had that idea. There's nothing in written history. Why would I trust you?
Absolutely. So this is just off the cuff question, but where do you stand in terms of theology? Who do you think got it right? And in terms of, is anyone today?
Martin Luther was an absolute liar, superb propagandist, very good propagandist, fantastically good. I mean, he probably would have taught Goebbels a thing or two.
I was going to say,
Luther was a liar of note. No. I mean, look, I'm going to be doing Luther at length. I've done various shows on Luther, and it shocks people. I mean, the stuff I showed you. What did you think of Luther on the basis of what I showed you, just on that small sample?
He just seemed like we have people like that today, probably more of them. He seems like just one of the first to do it, basically, to use scripture to create a cult of himself, his
right.
personality.
Now understand though, he wasn't just a priest under the church. He was the founder of the church,
Yeah.
right? You've got now a seriously corrupt founder, and that's just me getting started on this guy,
Hmm.
right? So you're going to start finding out Luther was a sick, perverted, disgusting man. Honestly, the more I read about him, and so yeah, um, when I having started to read through the history, looking at the early church fathers, looking at the early church like Irenaeus and his discussions of the fights the church had with Gnosticism, and then coming across the arguments that from the 1600s to the 1800s that Protestants were making for the legitimacy of their religions, right? And how they said, no, hold on, this is how we trace ourselves back to the apostles, and then saying, yeah, you see those Satanists over there, you see those Wiccans over there, those witches over there, those atheists over there. Yeah, they were real Christians, and we trace ourselves. You're like, what the fuck are you talking about? That's bullshit.
Hmm.
When you read the history of how the founders of all of these, the Baptists, the non-denoms for that matter, the Anglicans. I'm Anglican. I grew up Anglican my whole life. I have a bishop. My uncle's a bishop in the Anglican Church. I have my grandfather and my uncle are priests in the Anglican Church for decades,
Hmm.
right? I mean, they trained at King's College in London, you know.
Hmm.
So one of them was the rector at what's the school next to Westminster? Um,
I'd be hard
the
pressed
one that
to.
all the rich kids go to.
Eton.
He was Eton. Yeah, he was the rector
Eton.
at Eton. My uncle
Yeah.
was the rector at Eton for
I
10 years.
see. Wow.
Understand? He was the rector at King's College, the rector at Eton. So this guy wasn't messing around. Understand? So why didn't they let me look through the Apocrypha? When you start looking at, when I went to the Didache, when I saw the nonsense that these guys were claiming was proof of apostolic succession in the Protestant church and the absolute lies they were telling, I was like, this is garbage. This is garbage from top to bottom.
Hmm.
Okay, this is John Wesley. This is all of the top names and this is bullshit. There's no other word for it. This is trash. And two, you look at the Didache, which is now the Didache. The Protestants made a very strong argument to push it to the fourth century. Now it's come back to 120, 100, 90, 60. Now there's clear arguments, very strong academic arguments to say that this thing is before the year 50, right? And you read the Didache, it's written before most of the Gospels, if not before all the Gospels. And it's definitively Catholic. It is not Protestant by any stretch of the imagination.
Hmm.
Then you read the early church fathers and you go, this is Catholic. This is the practices are Catholic. The Eucharist is Catholic. The whole theology, the doctrine, the whole belief set is exactly the same what the Catholic Church teaches today. There's very little difference. You
Hmm.
look at it, this is Catholic. This is by no means remotely Protestant. So you look at it, Catholic doctrine seems to me to be the authentic, original doctrine.
Hmm.
This is what the hundreds of early church fathers believe. This is what they believe from the first, second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh, eighth, up until the 1500s and Martin Luther. And then Martin Luther introduces what was universally derided as heresy, as falsehood, as Gnosticism. Martin Luther starts going, yeah, that Manichaean trash, yeah, we need some of that.
Hmm.
Understand those old heresies? Let's bring some of those in. I mean, so understand my issue that this is a problem for me to look at this and go, this is not Christian. You look
Hmm.
at no, there are problems in the Catholic Church too, but this doesn't mean that I mean you can have a criminal in a bank. It doesn't mean banks are bad.
Hmm.
Understand?
No, I
But when you
understand.
look
Yeah.
at the
Go
when
ahead.
you look at the founders of Protestantism, and you look at the heresies they engaged in, that they camouflaged them a bit, they prettied them up a little bit, but you look at the Gnosticism within it, and you're like, this is not. There's something toxic intertwined with this.
Yeah. Yeah. See, in terms of denominations, me personally, like I said, I come at this from, I'm an outsider. I'm a backdoor Christian. I wasn't raised in the church or religious. I come from a secular family, a secular background. I came to faith later in life. I would say
Yeah,
I became, if you want to use the phrase born again, I'm not, that's very American. That's like an Americanism, isn't it? More than anything today, the whole Baptist thing. But
born again was just considered being baptized
yeah, I
in
suppose
the early
in a
church.
way, but I wasn't baptized in a church necessarily. But I suppose I felt that God working in my life, and I came out of that way of living and started walking the Christian path. Well, I don't know how to really talk. I don't have the language set like a Christian. Do you know what I mean? Because I wasn't raised with the words to talk that way. I don't really know the rules of engagement, if you understand.
Yeah.
That for me, that was in about 2014. So I'm relatively new to the thing. I'm 31. I'm still quite young, you know. I don't
I see.
feel it, but I'm still quite young. My knees don't feel like they're very young because I've worked in retail for 10 years. But so I'm still got a lot to learn. So I'm asking these questions from all denominations and faiths. And you know,
Mm.
my issue is I have a lot of people telling me their way is the only way. You know, and I'm not willing to just go down
Yeah,
one particular
you know,
domination route because
when
they
you
say so.
when you go to Aquinas and you compare Aquinas to Luther and how Luther ranted against logic. I mean, the man despised logic. Now, why would you do that?
Mm.
Why would you say that logic is a whore? Logic is satanic. Logic is a satanic practice. Satan lies to you using logic.
I'm
This doesn't make
guessing.
sense,
I'm guessing just anyone who says something like that wants to get away with doing something they know is wrong. So they create
right? I
their
mean, yeah,
own
when you write
philosophy,
to
you
your
know.
wife and say, "Hey, I'm not getting it up while staring at naked prostitutes," and I think the Jews did this to me, like, what the fuck?
Yeah.
I mean, what is that,
It's evil, is what it is. It's a psychopath or a narcissist using religion
right?
to try and get away with his
So
sins,
yeah, I look at
simply, you know.
this. Yeah, but that was I meant to say something else that you asked me, but no, look historically when I use history. Oh, when you look at Aquinas and you look at his method of determining facts using non-contradictory logic and use propositional logic, because to use propositional logic, you must have clear definitions. But when people try to muddy the definitions, then they're trying to bullshit you.
Hmm.
So Aquinas was very careful in his meanings. Martin Luther tried to redefine. He developed a method of redefining terms. Why would you need to redefine terms?
Hmm.
Right? Sophists do that. Propagandists do that. It is part of propaganda. And Martin Luther was a superb propagandist.
Hmm.
I'll be talking about that. There's so much material that I'm busy collating, and it's just a lot of work for one person.
Hmm.
And I only have so much time. But
Do you think Martin Luther was a part of a higher agenda with people behind him making him do this? Like, or was it just
so there are things that I'm very
one man just
careful
doing
to
his thing?
say.
Go ahead, yeah.
Look, I mean, I had to do a lot of calculus in my head, extrapolating how many people out there. Look, I had to make sure that you're going to pay me not to die, right? Whether you're paying my company $50 million, which happened, right? They used to rent me out at $20,000 a day. That was my fee when I was working in government work, right? Because that's my fee. You pay the money. We're good at. But when I was working security, obviously private security, um, you do a lot of calculus, and you've got to stay within the bounds of reality. Sure, you can war game in your head, you can do what ifs, but you need to stay connected to reality somewhere. And as an engineer, you've got to kind of stay linked to reality,
Hmm.
right? So Martin Luther, again, it's hard to prove. I believe there's information in academia that has not been made public. I think some scholars are aware of it because you see echoes of it, and they talk about it. They mention things that I haven't been able to find, but I think Martin Luther was involved in at least two, if not the head of, or became the head of at least two secret societies. One, the Rosicrucians, that he became the head of. And the Rosicrucians, when you read the Rosicrucians, they started in Germany in the 1500s and blah, blah, blah. Well, the Rosicrucians claim that they started in the 1200s. And a Christian Rosenkreuz, a Christian Rosy Cross, wonderful name, went to Morocco and he met a Sufi and he converted to Islam and he was taught the Rosicrucian secrets. And then he came back to Europe. Well, and a Sufi, a Muslim, and Martin Luther was involved with this organization. Martin Luther changed his symbol of his house to the rosy cross.
Hmm. Yeah.
Like, okay, that's odd, right? So, and then I believe he states, and I think there's evidence that I have, and I've got hints of it, and I'm trying to pull it together, that he was involved in secret societies, the possibly, if not the Freemasons, but the Rosicrucians and another one. He was a Grand Master in these secret societies, so he was corrupt. Honestly, believe that.
Yeah, well, again, I don't know how far into the whole conspiracy realm you go, but as soon as those societies get involved, Oddfellows, Freemasonry, Rosicrucians, they're all, as far as I'm concerned, they're all under the same banner, just with a different skin. Their agenda's the same, and
Mm, agreed.
it's basically introduced this false doctrine to the masses, subjugate, invert, confuse cultures, make sure they don't forget where they come from and who their true history is and who they are, and then supplant it with this new
That's one of
ideology.
the three main thrusts. If you look at ideological warfare against the nation, if you read ideological warfare
Yeah.
papers by warfare planners, there are three main thrusts that you use against the nation:
Hmm.
amnesia, shame, and irrationality.
Yeah.
Amnesia is to forget your culture, strip you of your culture. You cannot draw from or get inspiration from what you've forgotten. You're a racist and you are slave owner, and therefore you do not defend what you're ashamed of.
Hmm.
And then you forget it. That leads to amnesia. And then irrationality. Eat the bugs, big bigot. Women
Yeah.
are men, men are women. Women have dicks. Irrationality. You understand? Those are the three main thrusts. So you've just mentioned amnesia.
Hmm. Yeah, it's to say, that's what they do. Their agenda's clear, and I don't know if you've read Albert Pike's Three World Wars letter, which he wrote to the head of the Freemasonry in Italy.
Yeah,
Um,
maybe years ago. Yeah.
yeah, and you can find the document, and people have contested the historical accuracy of this letter, but you read it and you're like, yeah, Albert Pike definitely wrote this. It's in his language, and they are the doctrines of Luciferianism, which he follows. Obviously, it's the Gnostic perspective that Lucifer is actually the true God, the light bringer, the bringer of gnosis and knowledge, against Adonai, the evil, dualistic dark side, and he has all this, And but
Yeah.
he writes this letter basically. I think it was released to the public, and it was written in like 18. I think it was 1879. I think is when the letter was sent,
Mm.
but it was surfaced in 1911. Which is when everyone was like, say, contesting, oh, he didn't really write that. No, 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 it's all nonsense. But then what he predicted about the coming world wars, he predicted the First World War with complete accuracy about what the plan was. And it's like you said, how you were describing these wars, the whole point of it was like exercising the atheistic understanding of wiping other
Mm.
inferior cultures out. He talked about it all, and he also talks about how they're going to use that war in order to foment a future second war, which will but the whole purpose of it was to demoralize the Western culture to get them closer to accepting their religion.
Well,
That was
Lenin states in one of his papers, he states that you only drop the hammer on a culture and destroy it
Mhm.
after you've destroyed their morals.
Yeah.
That's Lenin.
Well, that's what he
And
says. He says once you just after World War II, we'll introduce the atheists and the communists. And he's literally, this is a mapping out of our entire 20th
yeah,
century.
isn't that like the thing called the revelation of the method?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah. The thing is,
Mm.
these are the builders. They call themselves the Masons.
Yeah.
They have written the script, and all they have to
Now,
do
for
is
instance, the head of the Muslim Brotherhood, like Hamas, is a member of the Hamas is Muslim Brotherhood. They're a wing of the Muslim Brotherhood.
yeah,
The founder of the Muslim Brotherhood is called Hassan al-Banna. Al-Banna is Arabic for builder. Builder meaning mason.
yeah, yeah.
See?
They
So
believe they are
it's a masonry society.
the creators of our lives, of our society. I don't think they were truly the builders of anything physical. I think
Yeah,
that it's a metaphor for them creating our world, our
yeah.
script, shall we call it, the script writers.
Oh, and
And
these are,
it's terrifying. You should read the letter. You should read the letter. You will be
I think I have
shocked.
in the past. I think I may
Yeah.
have some years ago, chatting to another friend, and so these guys are, so Muslims are Freemasons. He was a Freemason, and Muslims claim to have been founders of the Freemasons, including the Rosicrucians.
Mhm.
So everyone blames the Jews. Now, I'm not saying the Jews are necessarily spotless, but I think the whole claims are exaggerated, and everyone hates the Jews. Gnostics absolutely positively hated the Jews. Seriously, Gnostics absolutely despised them. They attacked the Old Testament, and because they want you to believe in if they can undermine the Bible, then great, right? I mean, think about this. I've been telling people on my channel recently. Remember they told you the Bible is fake and now even the kids are gay? Because that's the whole story. The
Yeah.
Bible is fake and now the kids are gay,
Yeah.
right? So that's the whole story. And so the thing is, you need to understand these as warfare strategies. You need to analyze them as methods of war, non-kinetic methods of war. Now, personally, I'd love to be able to just shoot them in the face, but sadly, I'm not in that position. Okay, I'd like to
Wow.
punch them in the face, grab them by the throat, and then punch them in the face, but I can't do that either. But these ideas, as much as they are toxic and powerful and infectious, and they are everywhere, they are fragile.
Oh yeah.
Surprisingly enough, they are fragile. They are very fragile when it comes to truth. Oddly enough, it's like, think of it: the totalist mind, which goes beyond the totalitarian mind, but this idea of totalism, they've got this perfect pool of milk, perfectly white, perfect. And if you don't conform, if you speak the truth, you're a drop of black ink in that bath of milk. And you cannot not see that black dot. It drives them freaking crazy. You need to be that dot of black ink. You see? Now, of course, there's consequences, so it takes courage, right? However, I try and tell people, you don't have to be this boulder that comes crashing down. You're not Thor. You're not Superman. You just need to be a grain of sand. You're one grain of sand, like the Ash conformity experiment. Speak up. You reduce their power by 80%. You inspire others to speak up. You wake up other people. Just speak the truth. Make sure it's the truth. Know what the truth is, right? Speak the truth. Then you grind. One grain of sand will start to grind your gears. A lot of grains of sand will grind their gears to a halt. That's all you need to do. You're not asked to do anything more than that. Just be a grain of sand in their gears. That's it.
Well, I'm trying. Let's just start by ridiculing the beliefs. Let's just start using their own tactics against them, shall we?
Laugh at them.
Yeah.
Don't regard them. I mean, I ridicule and I make fun of these on my channel. You see, I mean, I'm pretty on your channel. I didn't know everyone, and like my humor might go amiss or whatever. But on my channel, everyone knows me, so I make some really bad jokes and I make some, but yeah, because I don't want people to take this stuff too seriously, because it's designed to create despair. It is part of its design. Because look, evil is kind of predictable. Evil is, it's got certain patterns, right? For instance, I'll explain okay, I'm in a situation where I'm looking after a principal, right? When look at kids. You've got a kid and you've seen kids, right?
Mm-hmm.
When you're with adults, you can do a range of different things, and you can approach things in a range of different ways. There's a wide spectrum of behavior depending on what you're doing. And once you define your context, then you define your protocols, right? But kids will do random, stupid things. They'll be sitting in school and suddenly turn around, take an eraser, and throw the kid next to them with the eraser on their head. They'll stab a guy with a pencil for no reason.
Mm-hmm.
Kids will do dumb things, right? They're erratic. They're unpredictable. Now, psychopaths, if criminals had to do random things like this, they'd soon reveal themselves. But they don't want to, because once you've decided to do something criminal, okay, let me actually crime, violence is an emotional process, that occurs over time. There's a trigger. Something triggers you. You have an agenda. You have something you want to achieve. And that determines how much you want to do it, determines your emotional attachment, which determines emotional arousal. Then you cross a mental threshold. Once you cross that mental threshold, right? Once you cross that emotional threshold, you start to change your blood chemistry. You literally start dumping hormones into your body, things like adrenaline, because now you've gone from calm to predatory, aggressive. The next thing you must do is you need to deceive, you need to hide that change. Because people are going to go, why'd that guy suddenly go from casually sitting there to predatory? People can tell the change because you create physical changes within the body. Now, you may not pick it up consciously, but your subconscious, especially if you're well aware, will pick it up. Something changed. You'll pick it up. Right? When I get that feeling, I'm immediately scanning my environment. Right? So until I trace where the threat is, right? Until I trace where the threat is, and I remove myself or I get close to it. I either want to be right on top of it or I want to be far away from it, depending on what's going on. So the next thing he has to do, he has to deceive. And he has to deceive using certain predictable patterns. He's going to have to change. But there's always nonverbal leakage that's coming off, whether through movement, whether it's through behavior, whether it's through speech, right? There's something, nonverbal leakage that will come off, right? Mm-hmm. Including verbal leakage from form of language, right? Now, violence is a very narrow spectrum of behavior. It's a very narrow spectrum. So because it's a narrow spectrum of behavior, it's a very predictable spectrum of behavior, and it escalates. It either escalates or de-escalates. Pick one, right? Your job is to de-escalate it or to never initiate it, right? Or to delay the escalation, right? So it's going to escalate. So it's going to escalate in very predictable phases. Now, for instance, a criminal has to choose a victim, right? He's got to choose a victim. So once he's decided to commit the crime, he then has to choose the victim. Once he's chosen the victim, he either has to go to the victim or bring the victim to him. These first three phases are non-violent. You can deal with them non-violently. Violence only occurs in phase 4. When you're close enough and he thinks he can take you, then the violence happens. Right? That's the fourth of 5 phases. So physical violence only occurs here. If you're smart, you can deal with it non-violently here, and you can predict it because you know there are certain triggers, what they call they're triggers, they are amplifiers. Triggers start them. They're amplifiers and they are modifiers which de-escalate. Right? I used to teach all this stuff. I used to teach people how to play this whole game in your head. So because it's a narrow spectrum, you can recognize it, and because these people are deceiving, they've got to play a certain game a certain way. Their psychology, their physiology is responding in a predictable mechanical fashion within a narrow range, and you can predict that range. See, so it's not you don't need to be a genius to figure it out. You just need to be a human. Because once I remind you of these things, you'll go, yeah, I remember that. Oh, I saw that. Wait, I did that once, and that's it. And your brain goes, I know this.
Mm-hmm. No, yeah, it's all clicking for me right now. Yeah, I mean, I got attacked at my old job actually for a member of the public because I
Yep.
refused to sell his wife alcohol. Um,
Okay.
because she had her two daughters with her, which were borderline underage. You couldn't quite tell. And I was like, I can't serve the alcohol. It's the weekend. It's Christmas time. We get checked. Your daughter's here. You could be buying it for them. They haven't got ID. They look under 18, just about 17, you know. But she screamed in my face, got violent, squared up to me, and I stood my ground and I said, "Get out, you're barred." Calm. I was cool about it. But then she stalked me. She stayed outside. She got her daughters to take photos of me through the window. Going through these stages you're talking about, you know what I mean? Establishing this authority over me and dominant psychological warfare was at place here, you know. Anyway, an hour later, her husband comes in, and I get called down to the till, and someone's saying, "Oh, Paul, some guys here to see you," and I was like, "What? Who is it?" And as I was saying, "Who is it?" coming down to the till, someone screams, "Are you Paul?" And I look, and then he just grabs me by the throat and starts pulling me back. And it's like luckily customers pulled him off me very quickly, and
Right.
it was done, de-escalated. But I could sense that thing in the air. He stopped. He looked at me, checked if he could take me first. He looked at who was in the way. All of it was there. Everything you were saying, you know what I
Yeah.
mean. And when he saw his opportunity, he took it. Um, you know, and all I had to do in that moment, it was just I wasn't in fight mode because I didn't want to lose my job, but it was defense
Yeah.
mode by that point. I just grabbed his
No,
arm
look,
and looked him in
your
the
brain
eye.
will do amazing things if you let it. If
Yeah,
you let the, it might seem strange. There's a part of your brain that is designed to keep you safe, but you need to get out the way and let it do its job,
yeah,
right? So your brain probably did a lot of sums and came up with a solution and figured he's not going to take a swing. You
no,
probably calculated, right? And he looks bad because he grabbed you first. If
yeah,
you had to do something that was questionable,
hmm
right? So your brain would have done a lot of calculus. The cost of you hitting him at your job, not good, even if you're justified legally. Whereas let him initiate, you figured it's probably safe. You probably were very calm when it happened.
oh
I'm
yeah,
assuming.
yeah. I didn't
Yeah,
flinch. I knew what he was going to do, and I let him do it.
yeah. No,
He,
your brain had
yeah,
known. Your brain knew, right? Your back of your brain figured it all out, worked through. You see, what's crazy is there's a part of your brain called it's called the oh my gosh, it's called the database of associative coherence,
that's a
right?
mouthful.
So basically, it is. I know it's weird. So you've got two forms of thinking. You've got logical. If I ask you, how do I assemble this puzzle? You've got to go, okay, look at this piece, look at that. It's very slow, very methodical, very rational, but very slow. It's to take in details and pause and then build these. But if I say, what's your mom's name? Do you love your mom? You don't have to go, well, am I supposed to? There's no 20 questions you have to go through. It's just a response.
Hmm.
But it's not because you're using woo-woo science. It's not, it's experience. Like when you open a door, you just reach out and turn it. You've done it so often that it's become ingrained. So what happens is when you look at a new kind of doorknob, you just assume this is how it works because your brain sees doorknob, it associates this thing with the doorknob, and it goes, yeah, this door probably opens like this, even though it's a different shape or different type of doorknob. So what happens is your brain in your forebrain will calculate roughly 2 to 3 choices per second maximum. Fighter pilots up to maybe 8. Whereas the back of your brain can process billions of pieces of data per second. Very, very fast. It's incredible. It's amazing. It's only in the last 5 years or so that the software has been developed to be able to measure this and record this, that the instruments and the software have been able to do this. So what happens is your brain will go through permutations, go through scenarios. It will reject a lot of scenarios and then it'll pick one that it thinks this should work. And as long as you stay calm, you will start, you keep taking in data about the environment, and it will update that model. That model gets updated, right? It will do this for you for free. It's amazing. When it'll keep you alive, right? And this is what's happening. You're calm because you're taking your conscious mind, stepping it out the way, and saying, okay, just observe and respond. And that part of your brain will just, it is thinking hundreds of times faster than your normal brain. It's extrapolating to the future. It's predicting the future. It's incredible how good it is. It's kept me alive.
Fascinating information. Thanks for sharing it. I mean, now you say it, I recall that moment. You know, this was well over a year ago now. I don't even work there anymore. I quit after all that because I thought I don't get paid enough to deal with that stuff. And I have my own company now, and I do this as well, and I'm fine now. I'm out of that. I'm my own boss, which is lovely. So actually, I need to thank that guy for giving me the kick to decide to leave that horrible workplace behind in a way. But I remember in that moment, I do. As soon as I made eye contact with him, I knew instantly, okay, so this is the husband of the woman I just refused alcohol for. He probably doesn't want to be.
Did you turn to face him when you saw him? Did you turn to face him fully?
No, I was at. I definitely angled my. I have some self-defense training from when I was a teenager, you know, and I knew I'm not gonna give away my core right in front of him and let him just punch me in the chest or anything, you know. I was kind of at an angle, you know. I turned the head, body slightly turned, but my feet were ready. I was ready for something. I knew he was going to do something, but it's kind of I could tell instantly, you're not going to hit me. You don't want to be here. You've been made to come here because your wife has made you. Okay. You just wanted to relax, probably. I knew that much. At the same time, he didn't want to be seen as though he was letting somebody talk bad about his wife, which I wasn't. I was actually very courteous and calm with her. She was screaming at me, you know. So I think he knew what she was like. I think he knew she probably caused this problem, and now he has to. I knew all these things instantly in my head. I was like, "You don't want
this.
to be."
You knew it all.
Yeah, you don't want to do this, but you have to save face. You have to do something. So you're going to make a show, and that's what he did. He grabbed me like this. He didn't grab my throat. He grabbed my collar, and then he pushed me back rather than pull me towards him. Okay, so all that instantly is not somebody who actually wants to hurt me. He wants to make a statement. So I let him do it. And on camera you can see it does it. I grab his hand so he can't do anything else with it once he's grabbed me anyway. Then he pushes it back a few steps. And then I yank his hand off me. He lets it go. He doesn't fight or anymore. And then customers pull him back. And then he pretends to do that, let me at him thing while customers are pushing him away. And then he leaves. And that was it. You know, but I knew instantly that's probably as far as it's going to go.
Yeah.
You know, because I could just sum it all up very quickly. It was very public. He was surrounded by a lot of people. This was a busy till on a Friday evening. You know, so I knew setting and again, it all happened in a second though. Like that decision was made in a second.
So you knew. I mean, that part of your brain switched on and you let it. You didn't step in its way.
No.
Right.
Because again, I don't get paid to punch miracles. People. You know?
Seriously, you got to when you listen to people tell you about how they got out of situations, it'll do miracles. It'll do the craziest things, right? If you let it, right? So, especially when people can't fight, I'm not going to teach some woman to fight 4 guys. You know, even I don't want to do that, but you know, it may happen, right? Yeah. But and I've got some training for that. But that said, she can't do that. So therefore, you've got to teach them how to engage, work psychologically, and so yeah, you did exactly the right things, and you knew with certainty what the scenario was, and you just let it play out. So yeah, I mean, I've been there.
It's all in hindsight though, because I wasn't prepared for that moment consciously.
Now you see, the fact that you're very clear is actually interesting, because if you weren't clear about it, you're very certain that, because that means that you were very much balanced within your forebrain, but poised to step into the back of your brain. How can I say? Your forebrain, your neocortex, or whatever they're calling it today, right? It is your logical brain, step by step, analytical, right? But when you switch over to combat or to high stress situations, you switch over to your cerebellum. Your cerebellum has no language. It doesn't speak English. It's like a dog. It's like Fido, the puppy. It listens to tone. Stop. Right? It doesn't hear words. It listens to tone. It might recognize patterns, like words, but delivery, posture, things like posture. gesture. Stop. It's listening to tone and gesture, posture, not the words. It doesn't know words. It can't speak English. It's Fido. Fido doesn't speak the English, but Fido can understand things. The problem is that it has a memory that is pretty short, all right? And to stay for the model to stay up to date and respond in real time, it has to relinquish control back to the forebrain, gather data. We're talking a snapshot, 20th of a second, then pass control back. Passes. And the thing is, when people say something happened and I've just blacked out, and next thing you know, I was standing at the side of the road with the car, and I missed the other car, and the kid was there safely, and I have no idea what happened. Right? When that happens, they went in here. This guy took over. And the thing is, the interchange was so fast that they say, I saw a flash here, and then I saw the kid, and there was just a flash, and then I saw a woman, and then I saw a flash, and I saw a wall, and then I saw a flash, and I turned away, and I saw a flash, and I stopped. So there was 1,000 frames, but because they are only capturing every 30th frame, right? When they're in the forebrain, they capture a frame, right? Which is a slice of reality. They pass that to the back of the brain. This thing is operating at 1,000 frames a second. This one's operating at 3 frames a second. So the problem is that so what happens is when this guy tries to see what happens here, he's only picking up every 300 frames. So when you recall and you get these flashes, you went, well, there's this flash and this flash of memory. See, because this one's only picking up every 300 frames that's happening here. This guy's processing way faster. Does that make sense?
Oh, yeah.
That's why you get this fragmented, disjointed memories. And that's why you feel things, but you can't, it's not able to articulate in words. It's too slow. So what happens is, what you need to do is you educate this part of your brain through experience, through scenarios. You simulate the problems. And also, when you learn things in a particular manner, they absorb into your brain. When you learn them in a very logical, progressive fashion, you specifically format the training, it settles into your brain, and your brain absorbs it, processes it, and works out through millions of scenarios, and it discards. So what happens is when you come into that scenario, your brain goes, oh, I've seen this before. Or it has a simulation that it's already done that is very similar to. It's not brand new data where it has to pause like a deer in the headlights. What the hell's this? That'll kill you. But it goes, seen this before. And it's calculating percentages and probabilities, but it takes a similar situation. It doesn't find the perfect solution. It finds the first solution that it thinks will work. Mm-hmm. That's all. It finds the first solution that it thinks will work. And then if you keep feeding it fresh data, it'll update that model in real time. Much faster. Yeah.
Everything you're saying is obviously great information, but it's kind of, I think talking about this is jogging my brain to have memories where perhaps I had already had experiences to prepare me for that moment, because I just had flashbacks to, I've been punched in the face 3 times growing up. Okay. And I never instigated any of them. Okay. The first one, I was very young, maybe 8, 9. I was at a park, and I remember this kid came up to me. He was also probably a bit older than me, maybe the same age. And he just, I didn't read the situation very well, and he punched me square in the face. I didn't understand that he was out to prove a point to his mates around him. Okay. And I was naive, and I obviously nice. But
Can I add something to that? When you saw it, you knew what was coming, but you then said to yourself, it might have been words that you actually went through your brain, or it would have been a feeling, an understanding. The words flashed through your brain real fast, but they were there. You said, no, he wouldn't do that.
Yeah.
I wouldn't do that. Therefore, he wouldn't. Did that happen?
Oh yeah. Naive, pure naivety.
You made a value judgment. The moment you make a value judgment, shit's coming down the pike. You see, that's one of the things you teach people. When you make a value judgment, you're standing somewhere and you make a value judgment saying, no, that guy wouldn't stab me because I wouldn't stab me. No, he wouldn't steal that purse because I wouldn't. The moment you've made a random value judgment like that, you got to start looking for shit coming at you, or something's going to go wrong in the environment. Value judgments are a sign that shit's about to happen.
The second time, I was a little bit older, and I was with my cousins. We just had been swimming, and they had made enemies with another group of children in the swimming pool. Then when we got out of there, it's like, let's take this outside situation. Okay. And I was kind of caught up in this. But for some reason, I was the one they went for. I didn't instigate anything. They must have seen me as a weak link or something. I don't know. And again, I stand there and I think he's not going to do anything because I've got these two right next to me who are ready to fight. To hit me would mean he's going to get hit. Why would they do that? I made a stupid value judgment again. I was wrong.
Yeah.
He cracked me right at the side of the head with full swing, you know. And then immediately afterwards, he got drop kicked. And what he suffered was a lot worse than what I had to deal with. Okay. It's like,
Right.
I foolishly assumed he wouldn't do that because he understood the consequences. He didn't, you know. And so again, these like learning experiences. The third time
Yeah.
I was at university, and I was talking to some girl of no importance to me. Just met her. It's what you do at university. You start saying, "Oh, what do you do then? What do you study? Where you live in?" You know, because we all have these different houses you live in, type of thing. But then next thing you know, I get taps on the shoulder. I turn around, and one of my friend group called Jonah punches me square in the face. Just whacks me straight in the face, straight in the middle. And
Yeah.
he does that, and then he starts screaming at me like, I hate you, I fucking hate you, or something like that. What are you doing? Like, you're a dick, and all screaming at me, pointing at me. And I'm stood there bewildered. I'm like, what's up? What did I do? What's wrong? Why did you do that? Do you know what I mean? I thought we were friends. I don't understand. It didn't hurt, to be honest. It was more of a shock. It was like where did that come from? You know, and
Yeah.
it turns out he thought I was hitting on this girl, and he apparently previously had been talking to her. He saw me as a
Yeah.
threat. He saw me as a threat, I guess, or something. And I
Yeah.
literally I was not pursuing her, and I had no intention to annoy him or anything whatsoever,
Friends
you
like that
know.
are dangerous, dude. Don't get around them when they're drunk, right?
Well, he was drunk. This is the problem. This was the
Oh,
situation, you know. And I realized this. I learned that day. You hate me, and you have for a long time. You have harbored some kind
yeah.
of weird,
Jealous.
weird, jealous resentment against me that I was
Yeah.
oblivious to. But all of these things, I learned a lot about people.
Yeah.
You know, all of these
So,
events. You know? So maybe that's what was actually working in the back of my mind
no,
when I was
it will.
confronted with this thing in the
And
supermarket. You know.
did you make a decision that that's never going to happen to me again at any time? Did you make the decision this is not going to happen to me
Oh
again?
yeah, I've wised up. I've analyzed these
Yeah.
moments, and I've learned
Yeah.
a lot
No,
about
but when
people.
you see
Yeah.
that's part of the process. These are common things. No human kind of avoids these things.
Hmm.
You see, this is a common human experience. We're wired that way. There is no third option. There's no second option. We all have to go through it like that. These things are going to happen.
Mm-hmm.
Some of us are more aware of it, but the thing is that this is how your body's made. Like our elbows don't bend backwards.
Yeah.
I mean, that's just being human, right? So psychologically and based on physiological constraints, certain things are so predictable. So I work with what I can predict, what is reliable, and then the rest is probabilities.
Fascinating. Well, probably we should just probably do. Well, we already have just done a full conversation on this. I never stopped recording, by the way, because that's just what will be.
Oh,
I've only just realised. Can I use this anywhere? Maybe Patreon for a little bit or
yeah.
something like that?
I'll
Because
talk about it. I mean, I had a
yeah.
discussion like this on my channel once. Someone asked me these questions because I said, look, the same things that I'm teaching you now about how to survive or stay alive under adverse conditions, potentially violent conditions, I've taken these ideas and I've applied them within the realm of ideological war, psychological war.
Mm-hmm.
I'm taking what I know about how to stay alive in these conditions, what I've taught people, how to assess. I'm simply applying the same concepts, right? These are enemies.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
they're going to operate slightly differently because this is a psychological campaign. They're gaslighting, they're lying, they're deceiving, they're using sophistry. But there's a method, there's always a mechanism. Understand the mechanism. You don't have to be perfect, you just have to be good enough.
Mm-hmm. I think we should definitely talk about gaslighting techniques and psychological warfare. Sounds like this is something you don't seldom get to talk about, but you are a professional in. This sounds like this is your domain. So maybe
Do
we
I
should.
sound like I know what I'm talking about?
You sound like you know what you're talking about, which is good enough for me. So there we go.
Yeah.
Unless you're playing a game and this is it. I don't know, but
No, I actually started writing a week ago. I started prepping how the truth is used to tell lies. I
mhm.
actually started prepping. So, I mean, there's so many methods. There's like something like 30 something known methods, but I decided to pick like 8 of them, and say, look, this is how how the truth is used to tell a lie. So the basic principles of sophistry. So I decided to do something like that. there's a philosopher called Schopenhauer who developed a methodology, and then there's another philosopher that took his ideas and just elaborated them and clarified them. And it's basically defining how propagandistic language, how sophistry functions. It's anti-logic, it's anti-logos. So this is something that I think people need to learn, but they need to learn logic. For instance, when you learn how to spot counterfeit money, they don't give you counterfeit money. They give you real money. You spend days and days and days just touching and working with and smelling and handling real money.
Mm-hmm.
And then automatically you feel that's not real.
Yeah. That's what I did. I did that for a living. I know exactly what to look for a real note because I handled real notes, and there's many signs actually. Yeah, fair enough. Right, well, we'll do that then. Once you have your presentation ready, you can do it first. Get used to the information.
Yeah.
Maybe in a month's
No, I mean
time,
the conversation we've had now as is, I mean that's something people might learn something from. But yeah, I
Oh
mean
yeah.
that's more catering towards physical aggression.
Hmm.
But and we're dealing with something that is psychological, that is amorphous, but it's not amorphous. It wants you to believe it's amorphous.
Hmm.
It's weak. It has vulnerabilities. It is fragile. It has fragilities.
Yeah.
We need to identify those fragilities and hit those. And we can. It wants you to feel you are isolated and weak.
Hmm.
You are far more powerful than you realize. The truth is an incredible weapon.
I agree.
Surprising.
I've made a video called "The Truth Is a Weapon. Be careful who you use it against," because people get defensive when you tell them the truth. Um, 'Cause again, you have to remember sometimes telling someone the truth is like brandishing a knife in their face. They're not going to. They
I'm
get
an expert at that too.
they'll get defensive about that. You know, if you start throwing weapons around and then pointing guns straight in the face,
Yeah.
if you want to equate the truth to a weapon, you know, it's a serious
Yeah.
situation. So I get that. Yeah. Um, we'll have to talk about this more in
Cool.
detail. I think I'll just upload this conversation to Patreon just so they've got something extra to sink the
Great.
teeth into. You know, I don't have to put
Cool.
this publicly or anything. Um, but I think we should definitely get together and talk about all of that sophistry, propaganda, the techniques used. Yeah, all of it. It's great stuff. Thanks for talking to you, Lloyd. I really appreciate this.
Welcome.
We'll talk soon. Take it
See
easy.
you soon.
Bye
Okay.
now.
Bye.